A very warm welcome from Switzerland for today's greenmatch webinar. Thank you all for joining. During the next hour, we will deal with the profitability calculation of renewable energy projects, and we will focus on the following subtopics. We'll start with the financial modeling of renewables with Excel, and then move to financial modeling with greenmatch. This is where we will show you that efficient and nevertheless reliable profitability calculation is possible for renewables. We will then show a use case from transaction to asset management before we will close the webinar with a Q&A session. We already received several questions before this webinar, but please still feel free to send in your open questions during the session directly via the GoToWebinar tool. If we are unable to answer your question during the live session, please accept our apologies for that. In this case, we would contact you during the next few days. Yeah, and let's directly start. I'm very pleased to introduce my colleague Pirmin Affolter to you, who will be your expert for today. Hi, Pirmin.
Hi, Olli. Thank you very much for introducing me, and yeah, thank you all for showing up today. Hope you are feeling well. Before I start, a quick note to myself. So my name is Pirmin Affolter. I'm a project finance expert at greenmatch. I joined greenmatch in July 2021, and previously I gathered around 2 years of experience in investment management, and I also worked on some renewable transactions. I've got a master in science in finance from ESADE Business School in Barcelona and a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration from the University of St. Gallen. So we will now come to our first topic, which is financial modeling with Excel. I'm sure many people of you, or probably everyone, already worked with Excel, and many used it for the profitability calculation of renewables. And there is also a reason why many people use Excel, because it has many strengths, which makes it so popular for financial modeling. I mean, first, it's widely used and well understood. There is a relatively high degree of customization and flexibility. There are many resources to learn how to use Excel. It is cost efficient, and it gets most of the jobs done. However, although Excel has many benefits, there are also some shortcomings of working with Excel. The first one being that complex formulas are often linked to different sheets, which makes reviewing and adjusting an Excel model quite time-consuming and prone to errors. There is a high dependency on the creator of the Excel model. So often there is, let's say, one person in the company that created an Excel model and knows pretty well how to use it and how to handle it. However, in a case that the creator of this Excel model can't work on it anymore because he left or something happened, often we see the problem that other people have quite a hard time to get the hang of this Excel model. Also, even if the assumptions are correct, calculation mistakes can lead to wrong results. Creating a new Excel model takes also quite a long time. Moreover, different assets require different models, which again is time consuming. And this also makes it really hard to compare those Excels or those assets depending how you view it. And it's also really hard to aggregate the results of those Excels. Lastly, collaboration on Excel leads to time-consuming discussions and numerous different project versions. So at this point, I would quickly jump into an Excel we've done. It is a really simple Excel, and it's basically just to visualize some points that have just been said. So when we open it, what we see is that is already the version 52 of PAF for Pirmin Affolter. So I've seen this often in practice that the version can go into the hundreds or way more. And it's really hard to know what has happened from one version to the other. In case you work together on them, you need to name them differently, and to re-aggregate them afterwards it's a mess. So that's definitely one shortcoming of Excel. I can now scroll down here just to show you that's the inputs we made for a simple profitability calculation. So you see there are many different layers here. sales, OPEXs, many inputs. And yeah, it's hard to keep an overview about what's happening actually. You could make graphs, right, to them, like graphs for every single input to see what you modeled. But then again, there would be even more on this sheet. And yeah, generally the overview is not really nice. If we jump to the profitability calculation, one thing I wanted to highlight is the difficulty of working with references here. It's a simple formula. It takes a value and adds inflation, but it's quite hard to see right away what's happening, because what we see here is it takes inputs fields and adds or multiplies it with 1 plus inputs of F66. So what I need to do is I need to go back and see where it comes from, see what this value stands for, jump back again, and that's now a really easy formula, but they can get pretty complex and linked to a variety of different sheets, and then it takes just a really long time to know what's happening. And it happens that people make mistakes there and don't really recognize them. Also, what happens is, like for the calculations, there are different ways to calculate IRRs. You can do it also monthly or yearly. There are always discussions how to best do it, how to discount the cash flows. And this leads to quite time-consuming discussions. So yeah, having highlighted those few points, I would now come back to the presentation, and we'll just do a short questionnaire. So the first question is, where do you see the main challenges when it comes to profitability calculation? Is this either the increasing complexity for financial modeling? Is it the constant need to adapt the existing Excel models? Is it the comparability of different models and projects? Or is it time-consuming discussions about calculation methods? Okay, so interesting. We see what has been answered most is the increasing complexity for financial modeling, followed by the constant need to adapt the existing Excel models. And lastly came the comparability of different models and projects, and the time-consuming discussions about calculation methods was the least mentioned point. Good, so after this, I will show you another way to do the financial modeling of renewables, which is financial modeling with greenmatch. To start this section off, just some words about greenmatch itself. It is a web-based software for profitability calculation of renewables. It has been created by our founders when they had to invest around $500 million for a Luxembourg-based renewable fund, and they had to invest that money into renewables. And by doing so, they saw that that there needs to happen something. It's too time-consuming to do all those Excel, and it should be possible to do a standardized solution for that. That's how greenmatch has been funded. So to greenmatch, it can be used to structure, transact, and monitor investments in wind, solar, hydro, and bioenergy. It can be used for investment valuation and analysis of sensitivities, to calculate the purchase price and to get to the desired return. You can track the financial performance of your assets, and all of this is complemented by the expertise of our in-house staff. So really responsive. We help you if you need them, if you have some questions for the modeling, or we can also give you some tips how to do something. We have already quite some big names as clients. You will also see they vary from advisors to banks and investors. Going to the next slide, greenmatch is independent of technology, project stage, and country. So you can use it, as previously said, for wind, solar, hydro, and bioenergy assets. You can use it also for projects in development and construction, for turnkey projects or projects in operation. Also, it is independent of country, so you can apply it to, you can value assets in all different countries, which is enabled by, we enable such thing as a formula builder in the tool itself for specific fields such as taxes and OPEX. Here is also a map about where projects have been modeled with greenmatch. So you see it has also been used all over the globe, to evaluate assets all over the globe. Of course, the higher focus is on Europe because we started here, but then nonetheless, there's nothing limiting the use to a single country. Also, it offers a solution for all market players in one application. So it can be used by project developers, investors, banks, and advisors. For the valuation of renewables, we have greenmatch valuation, which is basically our tool that, with which you can do the financial modeling. It allows for precise planning of future cash flows, can be used as valuation basis for transaction decisions, and you can easily share the results with the stakeholders. What are the benefits of working with greenmatch? So first, even the most complex project structures can be modeled, simulated, and combined into a portfolio. The efficient structure accelerates the transaction process and gets rid of time-consuming adjustments of financial models. So we see that our clients, especially once they get a hang over the tool, they can model from scratch an asset in around 2 hours. Of course, this depends on the complexity of the project. It can take longer or less, but it's really time efficient. There is also a user-friendly layout, making sure that the overview is kept. Since it's standardized, it allows for easy comparability of different projects. It is EY certified, so this guarantees that the calculations are correct, and therefore you can allow to focus only on the inputs, and you don't need to worry about any calculations in the background. The digital platform enables efficient sharing of projects, and you can easily work simultaneously on them. You also don't have to worry about data privacy, so we work strict according to Swiss standards. And lastly, as said, we have internal expertise to help you with certain processes, so you can focus really on the analysis of the assets. So having said that, I would jump into the tool itself, because I believe it's better to see it firsthand than just to speak about it. That's the login to greenmatch. I've already prepared it to log in with a webinar account. Of course, each user gets its own login. So I'll come here, I see my different projects here, jump into the greenmatch valuation one. That's basically what you see when you enter it. So just to give you an overview, here on the top we have the different sections of greenmatch. Valuation, as said, is the calculation engine. Here you can model transaction plans, update the plans, etc. We have the asset controlling, where you can compare two different plans, and you can add the actual figures to the plans to see how your asset performed in the past. We can aggregate different plans to a portfolio. We have a marketplace where people can buy and sell their assets, and other people can buy them. And we have My Data, where we can import templates. One example being you have different projects in Germany and you want to update the price score for all of them. You can set it up once as template, upload it to My Data, and then easily import it to all the different projects. Okay, now coming to greenmatch valuation itself. Now in valuation, you see here the overview. Of course, you can change the language. In the overview, that's now the overview of the project, not of a single plan. So in the project overview, you see the name, the kind of technology it is, the country, currency, the status, etc. You can add a description, map to know where it is located. You see here in this project, we've created two project versions, so two plans. once the transaction plan and once an updated plan. Now, just to show you how you can use that, in that example, I changed the p-value from 50 to 90, and you see how the projected IRRs, project IRRs and the other IRRs change because of that. You can lock a version, so you can't, let's say you made a transaction and you don't want anyone to play around with it, you can lock the version. Of course, you can delete versions and you can copy them to make changes in them, all easily with a single click. You can invite new users to the project. As an example, I could invite Olivier. I could invite him as a guest. This would mean he can only see the project but can't make any changes. Or I can invite him as contributor, which means he got full access over the project itself and can make all the adjustments. One example of this would be you could share this project with a tax expert and say, please check my tax calculations, or whatever. I mean, there are various use cases for that. And as said, you can work simultaneously in greenmatch. You have a log, you see the last edits, and you see also what has been changed. You can easily recover those versions in case something happened or you made some changes that you're not happy with it anymore. You can add comments for other people's. There is a data room to upload documents such as contracts. So having explained the master, I would now tell you how greenmatch itself works. It's built similar as an Excel with input fields here on the right. A field for templates where you can, where you see the templates for inflation, etc. And here on the left side, you have the aggregations of the results. We'll go a bit more into details afterwards, but you see as example the IRRs, the cash flow waterfall here in the overview. And we have a fully integrated financial model with P&L, cash flow, and balance sheet. So starting with production, here we've already prepared a model, but some inputs, but I'll still show you how you could add, in that example, production units. So it's quite simple. You go and add, you do the inputs, power, potential, etc. You say the production start date, and then you can say when the production end is. So we always recommend our customers or the people working with greenmatch to use relative references. So in that example, we'd use production unit start plus a default lifetime. Because what then happens is you can just change the lifetime here in case it increases to 30 years, or you change your assumptions to 30 years, and you don't need to do any more changes in the project. So whereas in Excel you would need to adjust the formula, here it's really one edit and changing this default lifetime to 30 years. Also important to say how it works, it's object-based. So all those turbines here are an individual object. I can add losses to those objects. We've modeled here availability and transmission loss. You can just name it however you want, loss tree, say the percentage, what the loss is. And you can then either choose all production units or some. So in case one wind turbine is behind the other and you think it has less wind, because of that, you can just add this one losses to one production unit in a quite efficient way. Going further down here, you can change the p-value, standard deviation, etc. You can add a monthly distribution. And what we always have on bottom is a graph that shows you what you just modeled further up, so that you know what's happening. We have this on a yearly, quarterly, and monthly basis, where it should be said that we don't go lower than month, because we've seen that our customers, that in general in this industry, you don't go to daily, you don't use daily models, you use monthly ones. See also net production sales. You can have it as a table too. You can download it. Yeah, that's pretty much it about production. Jumping to sales. In this example, we made a project that has first a feed-in tariff and afterwards goes to market prices. But there are plenty of different revenue models you can add here. And we've modeled, customers of us have modeled plenty of different projects. We're quite confident that we can model any exotic revenue model with that. As example, you could choose PPA, annual base load, change the production. You can do the value as net production. You can add templates, you have delivery profile. You can work with floors and caps. You say the method of payment, if it's monthly or quarterly or whatever. You can adjust for global market prices. You can also use different prices for buying and selling in case you don't produce enough. You can do interaction with feed-in tariff with the market price. Also, what we try to do here is we have question marks for all fields that are not self-explanatory. So it's written exactly what each kind of calculation is doing. You can add global market price logic, add independent sales. And yeah, what you can clearly do is you could say 80% of the production is feed-in tariff and 20% of the production is a market price. So that's all possible with greenmatch. Again, on the bottle, the different graphs. Going to OPEXs. Again, since we work with objects, we can add also here OPEX objects to the different objects created in sales. And again, here in that case, we've modeled so many projects with greenmatch, so we know how important it is that everything can be modeled with it. So that's why we added here plenty of different kind of ways to model something. It can be fixed per project based on net production, power, sales, single per production unit or per project. You can add templates, or you say if it's simple, serial, or even a matrix. We have also some option-based components where you could do OPEX positions with malus or bonus components with a cap, with floor end caps. You can choose the financing mode if it's internal for internal cash flows or if it's external. Then in case, let's say those options are not enough, we even have a custom formula builder. So just as with Excel, you can model your formulas yourself here. As example, I could say 0.6 times sales of last period. Check, okay, that works. So I could do that. You can add inflation to it. So that's how it works here with the OPEX. I can edit it here. There's this inflation. I can change the inflations based on the templates I have quickly. I can import different inflations I've done in my data. That would now come, let's say I've done this in a different projects and wanted to input it here too. I can just download it with this action. Now it shows a 2% inflation. And also here you see on the bottom what you modeled. Going to CapEx. In the CapEx positions you add, as example, goodwill, power plant and facility and ground objects. You can do the due date, fix a project, you add a depreciation. If it's linear, digressive, immediate write-off, or even an appreciation. You say if it's included in the purchase price, you add financing mode. And here, which is a nice function, that's to calculate the purchase price you can pay to get to a desired return. So let's say I want to achieve a 5% return. I can calculate it. In that case, I could pay 22 million. If I want to have only a 3% return, I could obviously pay more in that case, 24.5 million euros. The residual is basically the difference between the purchase price and what I have here in the total for the capex positions. I'm going to debt. That's where you add your debt structures. So we can, as example, choose a term loan, input the amount, the issuance date, the redemption profile, how it is, annuity bullet or custom, the loan period. I can add cash sweeps, say when the cash sweeps start. I can add a redemption-free period. I can say the frequency of redemption, of course, the interest rate, how long the interest period is fixed. And I can also assign the methods of payment. In case you have a construction product, you can add a construction loan where you can capitalize interest during construction. You have different interests here in construction. You have commitment interests, you can choose redemption profiles, etc. You can add some cash sweep settings here, and you have a tier for reserve account for the SRA. And we see here how the loan is slowly paid back. And the reserve account stays pretty much the same. Coming to taxes. We know that's a sensitive subject because taxes are quite complicated and they're really different and varying from country to country. So what we have done is we have some defaults, EBIT, EBITDA, EBT with additions, where you can add your additions here. But we also have a customized formula builder, where you can explicitly say how you want to calculate it and just add the formula. Start date, end date, can add loss carry forwards, and also a transaction, again the method of payment. Going to the transaction tab, that's where you add as example the hurdle rate. So what does it mean here? The hurdle rate is used, we will see that afterwards in the overview, to show the value of the asset at different stages in the lifetime, depending on a different hurdle rate. Let's say you expect that renewables, or let's say wind project goes at around 4% hour, you can input that here, and then it gives you the valuation in the overview, which we'll jump to afterwards at 4%. You can say the equity drawdown mode, is it as needed, or you can also do it manually. You can add a liquidity funding at transaction. Here are now the payout restriction. So we can add a DSCR, look back period, and payout restrictions in redemption-free period. You can say when dividends are paid out, and you can activate the minimum liquidity. Also here the option to add shareholder loans. That's similar to how the debt is structured. Again, different redemption profiles, can add a cash sweep again. And we can add the transaction expenditures and open items, which is then showed here, also balance sheet, etc. Last tab on this field for the templates are the investor tab. This is a tab we created because we've seen that some people have that they want to exit the project, let's say after a few years after transaction, and they want to know in that case what happens and to what price they can sell it. So if I decide to exit before project end, I can first say what is my equity share. I assume now 100%. Can add the exit date, let's say transaction, and an offset of 5 years. I know the buyer will pay 4%, that's what I assume. And I can create here this calculation now. You will see at the buyer's hurdle rate of 4%, I can sell it at 8 million after 5 years, and I'll get a IRR in that case of 10.4%. In the templates, we have all the different templates saved, which are used in the calculations, so inflation, etc., where you can upload them again into the different positions. Yeah, so that's the inputs. And now quickly coming to the outputs, you see we have here different IRRs. We also say how we calculate them here. Calculate the break-even, the payback, capital needs, and the cash returns. We have a cash flow waterfall, which should give a quick overview of the project. So the black line are sales. In dark green, as example, is debt redemption. So you see that in the beginning, in the first years, there are quite a lot of debt redemption and interest, which then stop here in 2033. And at that point, that's this lila, that the distributions increase. So then you start really paying out dividends. And the OPEX stay pretty much constant over the lifetime. Of course, you can also have this as a table, and then you see the cash flows. Here, one next to the other also has a graph and table, map where it is located. And you have other indications such as uses and sources. You see the debt coverage. So if you comply with the DSCR, we see in that case we mostly comply with it, but not in those years. Here is the net present value. That's what I said before. Now it's the value here once at the equity IRR, which we have now 6% here. And the other calculation, this dark blue, is at that 4% hurdle rate, which I said is what I expect would be the discount rate on the market. So I see that if I would sell it now at these 4%, I have a gain of this difference, which is around 2 million. So that's this difference here. I have here the liquidity profile. So I see right away that I have a liquidity gap in 2031 and 32. For that, we have also these optimizations, which indicates there is a liquidity gap. So maybe in such a case, you should have a look at how the project is structured. Graphs to production, which we've seen before, to the sales, OPEX, CAPEXs, debt, and taxes. And we have all this here. Just need to see that it loads. You can also download all of these informations as a fact sheet Excel. So you could show that to, as example, your investment committee. They have all the most important information in a 2-pager. That said, we also have a financial model. So you see how the calculations are done here. Goes to NOPAT. We have the cash flow statement, which also showing the change in liquidity and the payout, cash flow to equity, free cash flow, etc. And a balance sheet. We also see liquidity trap, how much liquidity is trapped in the project at the different points, or if there is a liquidity gap. And it's the possibility to do some simulation, 1-parameter studies or 2-parameter studies or Monte Carlo. So this would be it to the demonstration of greenmatch valuation. I would now go back and we would have another questionnaire. So the second question is, do you regularly check the liquidity planning of your projects? Yes, we do that regularly. Yes, but not on a regularly basis. Oh no, we don't pay enough attention to it. So most people said yes, but not on a regularly basis, followed by yes, that is really being monitored. And around 20% say no, they don't pay enough attention to it. Okay, so now to come to the last part before the Q&A, we'll show the use case from transaction to asset management. So yeah, first, we know there are different kinds of performance management. You can check the commercial performance, the technical performance, and also the financial performance. And this has to be said at that point. greenmatch clearly focuses on the financial performance monitoring of assets, especially the finance part. So to do management reports and budgeting, you can do the net asset valuation with it, liquidity and dividend planning. So greenmatch covers most aspects of financial performance monitoring. As I said, you can track the financial performance of your assets. With it, you can optimize equity distributions and prevent future liquidity gaps. You can compare different plans to see the deviations due to changes in input. And we can also create them customized reports. How is this being done? So as I showed you before, I showed you how to create a transaction plan. So once this plan has been done, I want to know after a few years or yearly or whatever, after a few months, so what happened actually now? Did the asset perform as expected? So for that, we make a mapping where we take your data that comes from the bookkeeping software and map it with greenmatch so you can import the actual figures. At the same time, what we've seen often that there are updated plans, as example, because the price curve changes. And now in the greenmatch asset controlling, we compare those two. So we create a plan that is based on actual figures for as long as we have them, and then the updated plan, and compare it to the transaction plan which we created in the beginning to see the deviations. So I would quickly show you that in the tool. So I would now change to greenmatch asset controlling, where we have a project. And now here we have already made a sample plan, an updated plan, and we have a transaction plan inputted. You see here now in the graph, that's the difference between the transaction plan and the current plan which we have now. So we see the RRs are luckily better than expected. All of them, here around 1% better. Yeah, in all of them 1 to 3% better. We see what caused those changes. In that case, sales are lower than expected at transaction. However, the OPEX are also lower, tax are a bit higher. CapEx position, we had less CapEx than expected, so less investment needed than in the transaction plan. And debt decreased a bit the returns. Coming to that current return. So now here I've got the overview about what happened, and I can now dig into more details. Yeah, so here what we see is the production year to date. You see here in the light blue what was anticipated, and in the dark blue we see the actual figures. So in this specific example, the actuals were lower than expected in January, February, March, April. In May, they were higher, so we had more production than expected. July, it's quite a lot lower than expected. So in such a case, it would be like a warning for you to check what happened in June. Was it just the wind, or did turbines not work correctly? So yeah, you would need to check further on that probably. Also see here on the bottom the deviation in figures. So sales of 14%. Here is a difference of 14%. OPEX, everything is on here. And this for production, sales, OPEX, EBITDA, and net operating profit after taxes also. So that's the year-to-date view. We also have a life-to-date view. Here we see the production over the lifetime so far. So again, when we see it's lower than it was expected, sales are lower, OPEX, EBITDA, and NOPAT accordingly. I can add the forecast here. So I see what the updated plan is. So in that case, we've adjusted the plan to reflect the lower production than anticipated at transaction, because we've seen here that in the first years we didn't actually achieve the expected production. We have the same for the sales here. For OPEX, EBITDA forecast, and NOPAT forecast. We have here also the financial model, which compares the plan with the current figures. So you can also view here what's the change in the sales, etc. You can have this as a graph table. We see the cash flow statements, balance sheet, and production. So jumping quickly into the ledgers. So that's how it works. We get your bookkeeping data, and then we map specific fields in the bookkeeping with here the balance sheet, P&L, and production. So as example, would map liquidity on liquidity here, receivables on receivables. And yeah, that's just like that. Or power plant and facilities, we map on power plant and facilities. And once all this mapping has been done, it's really easy to import just a new ledger, import the actual figures, and all of this data is actualized. Yeah, so that's it to the presentation. About greenmatch valuation and greenmatch asset controlling. Of course, at that point, I like to say that we're always improving our tool. So right now we're focusing on integrating this asset controlling here in valuation itself. So you see the actual figures in the valuation I showed you before. So then you can easily adjust the plan. So as example, you would see here the actual production, recognize, okay, it's lower than expected, and just make those adjustments. So that's one thing we're working on, which should be released in the coming weeks. I've talked already over it. We have another questionnaire. So is digitalization already a strategic priority to your investment management process? So either yes, but not on a satisfying level, or no, not yet. So the result of this questionnaire is yes, it is a strategic priority, but not on a satisfying level. That's what most people answered, followed by yes. So 31% feel already really comfortable with that, and 25% say no, not yet. So yeah, now it's really it about the presentation. We'll now come to the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pirmin, for your presentation. As said, we move on to the Q&A session right now and directly start with the first question. The question is, how can I ensure a reliable liquidity planning for my projects with greenmatch?
So with greenmatch itself, I can show you that in the tool again. So one thing that is important is to add the right payment terms. So for all those OPEXs here, I can say if it's a monthly payment or if it's paid all 3 months and when it's paid. So that's really important to add here correctly, because otherwise you will miss, maybe you won't have the money in the project to pay those payments. And just as here we have an optimization popped up which says there is a liquidity gap in the project. So what you can add is here a minimum liquidity profile. So you could say I always want to have a minimum liquidity of, let's say, 1 million in the project that can be used in case such an issue arises. So yeah, that's what we would say how to prevent, how to ensure reliable liquidity planning with greenmatch.
Thank you so much. Several participants asked about the same problem, let's say, in understanding. The question is, what are the differences between the project IRR, equity IRR, and payout IRR previously shown in the tool?
That's a very good question. I should have explained this in more detail. So project IRR are basically the IRRs the project is generating independent of the financing structure. So this would be assuming 100% equity financing. The equity IRR considers also the financing structure, so that there is a leverage effect by adding debt, which in the usual cases increases the return. So that's included in the equity IRR. And the payout IRR adds certain payment restrictions. As example, that dividends are only paid in certain months and otherwise compliance with the SCR, etc. So the payout IRR would also consider that.
All right, thank you. The next question is, where do you see the main potential for optimization when it comes to due diligence?
Good question, not so easy. So the main potential for optimization when it comes to due diligence, I mean, we see that probably there is a lot of potential for optimization in the way of collaboration. I mean, digitalized tools to work together, as example, on contracts. So contract management tools can help a lot. I think it is important to also maybe try to reutilize Excel models that have been proven in the past to be correct and reliable, and to use reviewed Excel models. We recommend to check all the contracts also by yourself and do this on time in order to guarantee that they are all correctly reflected in your calculations. You can conduct internal benchmarking. Let's say you have an idea how a contract should look like, how high the different fees are, etc. And lastly, work with well-renowned advisors and focus mainly on negotiation. Focus also on negotiation. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you much. The fourth question, is it possible to run simulations within the greenmatch software?
Yes, I showed it quickly before, but there are actually two ways to do some simulations or comparisons with greenmatch. One is to have here different project versions where you do some changes, where you, as example, in that case, change the p-value and you see them one next to the other and see the change. You could do the same with a decreased production or with different depth structure. And the other option that we have is here under simulations, you can run one parameter study, a two parameter study, and you can do a Monte Carlo calculation. I can show you a one parameter study. You can add a new simulation as example for the p-value. So you could say, okay, what happens if the p-value increases from 50 to 95? You save that, and now it calculates this scenario. And you see here now the different returns, equity returns, payout returns, and project returns, depending on the p-value. So you see that at P50, the project IRR is 4.3%, and at P95, it's only at 0.5%. So yeah, these are two ways to do some calculations, some scenario analysis with greenmatch.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, just to let you all know, we got a long list of very specific questions. I think we won't answer those ones in this, during this session, but we will come back to you during the next days, as promised before. So we will close the Q&A session with a question that arises several times. Data security is obviously something top of mind also to you. Several people asked about how can I make sure that you won't use the data from my projects modeled with greenmatch for other proposals.
Okay. So I mean, first off, we know how important data security is, and we know that the last thing you would want is that your data gets used for analysis, what people can pay, etc. So to make sure of that, we actually don't have access to your projects. So we at greenmatch, we don't see what you model, we don't see what you do. With the tool, we only see your projects if you share them with us. So only if you decide we can have access to the project, we also see them. Also, data security is, since it's such a crucial part, for us, we make sure that we comply to all the laws, the regulation, and we also use very secure data center, like the same as big Swiss banks would use. So in a nutshell, we take it really, really high, this data security. And as said, we don't have access to your data, except if you share it with us.
All right. Thank you very much, Pirmin, for answering these questions. So we have already reached the end of this webinar. I hope you enjoyed the time with us. You can give us your feedback in a few seconds by filling in our feedback form. It will be opened automatically within the browser. It really just takes a short moment, so we would highly appreciate your time for that. Thank you to our audience for your interest and participation. As Pirmin mentioned before, we will have some new highlights to present in greenmatch within a few weeks, so stay tuned. We'll inform about that as usual via social media and our newsletter. So at this point, stay healthy and see you soon for another event. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.